okay, I have a question for you with affiliate marketing. So as you've grown your business to the point where it's at and you have some fabulous connections, do you do a lot of affiliate marketing? Like, is that a piece of what has been part of your revenue?
It's not been a large part, but I want it to be more.
Yeah.
And I know it could be more.
Yeah.
And so, again, coming out of the very, very focused done in a day, which I did not do a ton of affiliate stuff during that entire period. It was very focused, very intentional. And coming out of that, I do definitely want to do more affiliate deals. And that's of interest to me highly because, again, I've got my very specific lane. But I also know that there's so many other problems that need to be solved for my people that I have a zero interest in solving. So that definitely is an area that I want to beef up, whether it's referral partners or affiliate marketing.
Yeah.
That whole area really interests me but it's also really hard because we only have 12 months in the year.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, if I'm selling my own stuff these months and then like I want to take a break these months and then how many months are left? And you have so many connections and relationships.
Yes. Well, and okay, how do you manage that? Because that's actually something I talked about on my podcast last week, which this will be months now. But I talked about this last week a bit because I get a lot of asks, I'm sure you do too, from your network where people are like, can you share this? Like, do you mind adding this in your email list? Like, could you do this?
Right.
And like, I actually don't mind the asks. And like, often I do a lot of those things.
Yeah.
But it does water down the things I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm an affiliate for, and I actually like, I'm not great at affiliating for things. Like I'm more of like a just reciprocity. I'm happy to post, but it's like, then eventually I'm like, oh, do you guys trust anything? Because I'm like, look at the spatula and this TV show. Like, okay, it's never been a spatula, but, but one time it was oatmeal, but it's like low key.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Breakfast is important.
Breakfast is important. I have your protein goals over here. So how do you balance that? Like, especially as you grow your network and like, how have you been able to create those kind of boundaries?
It is very, very tough because I think that I'm one of the few people who has an audience and is generally friendly and like approachable. So naturally people then will ask me over other people because they feel like, okay, she talks about how much she likes to collaborate. Yeah. And so it's like, that's an open invitation. But a lot of other people are very closed off and only sell their own offers, which is fine. I did that for 2.5 years and it netted the results necessary because that focus was there. So I would say I'm still navigating the best way to do that because I know my own data and things like summits and bundles don't breed much for me. And they actually get the highest number of unsubscribes on my email list. So looking at data, I'm like, I can't do those anymore because oddly enough, the lowest unsubscribes are my sales emails, which I'm like confused about, but that's also great.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if I have a choice between selling my own thing and people being happy about it and not doing a summit or bundle and having a bunch of people unsubscribe,
100%.
So I've had to say no to a lot of those types of offers, not because nobody else should be doing them. Look at your own data. But because I know what works and what's going to yield me results. And so I think too, I'm more interested in like events, whether that's speaking or sponsorship. I'm more interested in bolder asks.
Yeah.
So a lot of the little asks feel like not as exciting for me. I'm interested in innovation. I'm interested in doing things differently that are going to stand out. And so that's kind of been my guiding light is this something that is going to stand out and yield me results, or is this something that's run of the mill, what looks like everybody else and is not going to stand out ultimately? So that's kind of been my guiding light right now, but that's something I'm going to really like nail down my guidelines for really, really soon.
Yeah, and I love what you're sharing even about like the bundles and the summits and stuff like that, because we get those asks too. And normally I'm kind of okay to do them because we're in that email list season growth kind of thing. So I'm kind of like, well, okay, not a big deal. We have a low ticket membership to funnel into. But I'll get a lot of like randoms reaching out to do them, and they'll be like, pay me like $50 to be in this bundle. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't know anything about you, you
right,
know, like,
hello?
yeah, like, who are you? I love the cold pitches.
Right.
So I'm curious for you, like, if you were put yourself back in your shoes, but pretend it's now, and you were like starting fresh, you have no social, like you are, you just have these connections of these people who helped you get all these jobs, which like, thank you to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Big ups.
Yeah.
How would you go about starting to build community and building audience? Because you have a great audience now, and like I imagine your email list is great too, and you have like a great group of kind of people there. So I'm curious, like, how would you go about building all that up?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a great question. I think that I don't ever. I mean, this is not me putting it out into the universe, but again, social media can go away at any time.
Yeah.
So while if that ever were to happen, I feel as though I still would be able to build up the way that I built it up, which is I have heavy DMs. I mean, you and me talking on the DMs all the time. I be in there chit-chattering with everybody, and I'm just like, whatever. But I think that because there's a difference between having somebody's DM or even email and somebody's phone number. I have a lot of people's phone numbers. And so I would then continue to ask, and I guess even if I had to start from zero, but I still had the knowledge of the past 8 years in business, I probably would move into either, again, VIP days as a start, because I believe it's a really great start to business, or again, these micro tools are just really, whether it's AI related or not, they're doing really, really well right now. Cool. And so people are looking for tools to do stuff because people are expensive. Team is expensive. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have a team at all. Yeah. And when, you know, macroeconomically things are happening and globally things are happening, people are looking for those swaps. And that just is what it is. That's not even a me thing. That's like a everybody thing. So if I'm able to build those tools and, again, take them on tour in the different communities, I probably would still stick to very similar to what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Enough.
How do you think, if you were in an early stage, like say you had no audience, like not no, but maybe you know some people.
Sprinkle.
Yes, a sprinkle of audience. How would you sell a VIP day?
I would go to events.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because I do events and you do events. Yeah. Like, I'm genuinely saying that because...
And you attend events.
Right.
Yeah.
I do.
Me too.
I love attending events. And because there's such an immediate trust that can happen when you're with somebody, like, face-to-face, that just, it's really not the same as online. Like, you can get close to people online for sure. Like, my friend Erin, who officiated my wedding, like, we were friends on the internet first. Like, wow. So those things can totally happen. And in person, there's just a chemistry that can happen between you and somebody else that's faster. And the thing is, you know, me being in operations people are never at events. Yes. And I understand that. And my ops people, if you're watching, please get out to events. Right? Like, I'm the only ops person. Exactly. I'm the only ops person in the room. So if I'm talking to you and then you talk to somebody else and they're like, I'm looking for an ops person. I'm looking for somebody to, like, help me with, like, strategy with my operations. Guess who you're going to say? Me. Because I'm the one in the room. Yeah. So again, I don't, if you go to events that are all of the same people as you, that's tough. And that's a different reason that you go to that event. If you go to an event where you are one or two and everybody else is in a different realm, you could just be racking up clients like nobody's business.
That's how we grew our business. Yeah, just doing like masterminds and stuff like that. And you just go in and you're just, I always say I'm like normal and people like me and then they want to give me money. Because it's true. Like, I'm just like, oh, you need a podcast? Like, you should do a podcast. Like, here's everything I know about podcasts. Do it yourself if you want. Right. If you need help, I'm here. And then they need help. And like, we work together. Same thing with social media. So it's been amazing. But I think it's such an underrated hack that. It is such an especially if you don't go and like treat it like a meat market where you're like, hey, you got, you know, I can have you some ops, like, you know, but I think like there's something there to be like, you talk to business owners, and I think for you, even, I know you're a very avid content creator, and I think my best content ideas come from people asking me questions. Totally. And they say things to me and I'm like, oh, you don't know that. Interesting. Great. I thought everybody knew that. And that's great information for me to know. And now I'm going to make some content about it. And I think people like really just don't do that when it's so powerful.
Yep, totally. I think that everybody's wanting to lean towards online, automated, virtual stuff. And whenever I see everybody zigging over there, I zag.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, which I love, automated. I love all that stuff. And I'm a zag. I'm going to go to events. Because y'all not there. And guess what? I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Even if you're alone.
Right. Totally. Like, I will totally go by myself. And I think that I understand the introverted aspect. I'm ambivert. So I'm like, I need equal parts alone and equal parts people. And I think that there's opportunities and enough variety of events to where you're not having to go to the 1,000-person events. If you're an introverted person, we don't need to do that, right? Don't set yourself up for failure at jump, but find, whether it's 100 people, 50 people, events that you can feel better about walking into that room and finding your people, right? You don't need to meet everybody at the event also. You know, you meet your sprinkle of folks and then stay connected and all of that stuff. So I'm going pretty hard on events, both from attending, but I also do want to sponsor some events and whatnot. So that's going to be a big push come 2025 for me. So I'm excited.
Amazing. How did you go about, Jordan, how did you go about knowing when to start your own event? Because I don't know if you know this or you're seeing this. You probably are, because I'm seeing it. You're like 5 steps ahead of me over there. I'm just like, Jordan, wait for me. It feels like everyone's doing events.
Yeah.
Lots of people.
Yeah. I think that I don't know if it's anybody who hasn't been doing events previously.
Yeah, interesting.
I feel like the people who are doing events are going harder on events. Yeah. But I don't know that I know more people who this is my very first event and I'm doing it now.
I think maybe it's where I'm located, probably in Canada. I think it's becoming so much more prominent where people are because when I started having my appointment with Maria, there was nothing. We were going to the States all the time, and I was like, I'd sit down next to someone and I'd be like, hello, and they'd be like, oh, I'm from this small city in Canada. I'm like, I live in that city as well. That's so funny. We're both here in Scottsdale. It's nuts. And so that's what was the impetus of starting these 100% events, and now we're doing 200 in March. Yep. But I feel like in the U.S. there's tons and tons of events, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think there are. Yeah. I would say I probably know of a lot more of events. Yeah. And that's why I share about them all the time because I don't know if, again, nobody's following anybody or what's going on. But I think just if you're a connected person, you know about events. But I would say there's still definitely room.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
And so, and I think that people are realizing that we're on the community podcast. Yeah. You need community. Yeah. You cannot do this by yourself. If you try, I don't want to say you will fail, but the likelihood of failure is so much higher. Yes. And so stop with the nonsense and find you some people.
So knowing that, how did you know when it was your time to start events?
So for me, I started virtual events. Okay. So my first virtual event was June of 2020. And I did my first Done in a Day virtual conference. It flopped, but that's okay.
Why did it flop?
Well, because I didn't make enough. So it was virtual. And I think we made it was a free virtual event for one day. And then there was if you want to buy the replays, right? So one of those things. Yeah. And I think we made $23,000 or $26,000 ish. And at that point, I'd already had 14 members. And I was like, this ain't gonna cut it. Yeah. So we got to do it again. And I tell people this all the time. Your first event is not the best reflection of all of your events. Yes, that's been my experience, both virtually and in person. So I turned around and I was like, we're doing it again, team. And we're doing it in 3 months. Technically, in 2 months, we're doing pre-launch. And they're like, what is happening? And we did the next round, and it was a paid ticket, but it was $19 virtual. We were all at home, right? And $90 ticket, I think a $99 VIP. And then I sold my program, which at the time was $4,000. And that second event was $160,000 launch.
Wow.
Night and freaking day. Okay? Yeah. So I was like, okay, I knew it. I made the correct tweaks and let's roll, right? And then I think the next event was 200-something thousand. My largest event virtually was September of 2021. And that one was 429,000.
Wow.
Virtually.
Wow.
With a Zoom room. and a Facebook group.
Wow.
No sales calls, all just in the
How
DMs.
did you get all these people in here?
Well, so that launch, we had 79 people join my group program.
Wow, that's amazing.
Within 5 days.
Yeah.
Again, not recommended, but it was great financially. So, I had a team at that point, right? I had a team of 7 at that point. And so one gal who was all DMs all day that was her job, full-time DM gal. And so she was like just slinging them, right? And she actually was a former student of my program.
That's so nice.
Yeah. And so I had her, and then I had 2 coaches, I think, at the time. I had my ops coordinator, my marketing coordinator, and a project manager, and a video editor and a graphic designer who were part-time. So we did the dang thing. It was pretty remarkable to experience that, because I would never have imagined making $400,000 in like a span of like a month, really.
Yeah.
But again, that helped us to really catapult. And I think that then when we were done with Done in a Day, then I was done with the conference, because the whole point of the Done in a Day virtual conference was to bring people to my program. So I'm like, cool. I'm like literally killing my entire like revenue streams. So then I was like, but I still want to do an event, and maybe it's time to do in person. And so I decided to do Make Your Mark Live, and that was a really quick pivot. And we did that September 2023 was my first one. And again, my first event was good, but I think I white knuckled the heck out of it. And, there was a lot of personal stuff going on. There were several people who had passed away, like right around the same time. And that was really hard for me to be present and hold space for 125 people while mentally trying to process all of that. So that was just a really hard event for me in a variety of ways. And so I already knew I wanted to do it again, because that's just like naturally, I'm like, if the first time for me isn't an indicator that it wasn't good. And I didn't sell anything at the event besides tickets to the next one. So we just did that one. And I will tell you, the second event was everything. Like it was like wonderful, glorious.
And was this the one that was just last week?
Yeah.
Okay, so what were your highlights of it?
It was just like everybody who was in the room was the right fit.
Yeah.
Like everybody had the same values of like kindness, being smart, being gracious, being giving, providing value, being open to the experience, owning their own experience. And that just makes it really fun and really easy when you have people that are aligned with your values and how you want to curate and hold the room. So it was just really fun, because I'm not a spotlight person. Again, I'm ops. So I'm like, I'm cool behind the scenes. I don't really care about this. And so the event, it was cool because I didn't do a single keynote.
Wow.
I didn't speak at my own event.
Yeah.
Which again, most people will be like, what's wrong with you?
I know Maria and I did the same thing on our first one. And then, do you know Drea Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, Drea Jones is doing a social media session at the one we're coming up in a few weeks. And I was like, maybe we should have done a social media session. We're like, no, it's fine. It's fine.
And I think it's like, I like being the person that's like, I met someone really dope at Jordan's event, and I'm really grateful that Jordan attracted who she attracted. That is better to me than like, Jordan's awesome, Jordan is like blowing my mind, and whatever else. Like, I would rather be known as like the connector, the curator person. That's the compliment and the testimonials that I want. And so if I know that's what I want as my ultimate testimonial, then how do I create the event around the ideal testimonial, right? Versus what's the typical testimonial that people want is, I want to be able to say I made all this money from my event, or I want to be seen keynoting, all over the place. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's different strokes for different folks. But for me, I knew what I wanted from my own event, and I got it, which is that I curated an amazing room of awesome women business owners who, again, are smart and kind. That's my combo. You got to be smart and you got to be kind.
Okay, I love this because I think there's something there around like curating from the end in mind. Like, I think that's something we don't do often, especially with events, like thinking about like I always with the event, like I'm always like, okay, how do we keep ego out of this? Like this is not about me and Maria. It's just about like the women. Like how do we serve them rather than it being about like, oh, did me and Maria get a cute side pic? Like, oh, I'm sorry, did you get the one with the mic stand? Like, it's just how do we make this really about them? And that's how we get such a high resale rate, right? And I'm sure it's the same for you. Like, it's because it's people who are just so excited to be like part of it because you're making it about them.
Yep. And that's really just a secret. Like when and also why I think my virtual conferences did well is because my events were so filled with people from my own community, maybe had a handful of outside speakers, so to speak, and everyone else was people from my programs or from my network. And so it just felt like, oh, this is like our event. We get to come every 6 months and like this is where we commune. And so with the resale and all of that, it's like when you make it about them, when they have the opportunity to be on stage, when they have the opportunity to show up in the chat, like that's what's exciting for them, right? So all of the ego stuff, it works. There's people who have events that do that and it's fine. Again, whatever you want to do, but for those of us who just truly do get joy and satisfaction from other people winning, then I feel like that's the ultimate win. And that's just going to bring so much goodness around you that it's always going to come back around. Like I never worry about like the tit for tat thing of like, okay, oh gosh, like she gave me something, so now I have to like find somebody to give back to her or whatever. I'm like, it's circles. And even when I give something to somebody else, I'm like, there's no strings here.
Yes.
Like I'm not concerned because again, I'm constantly feeding and being fed and it all comes around.
Yes, 100%. Well, it's actually funny because I think that is something that a lot of people do not live in. That's not the energy that a lot of business owners live in, where it's always like, well, I gave a referral, like, and now I'm not giving any more referrals because that person doesn't give me any referrals. And I'm like, but did you get referrals from somewhere else?
Right.
Because it's like the karma of all of this. Exactly. Is that all of this kind of comes back.
It totally does. Yeah, the whole tit for tat thing, that's not going to last long.
Yeah.
Stop doing it.
And I think especially if you're like, I think one of the things I'm really hearing from you in this interview is about how relationships have been kind of the core of your success.
100%.
And if that's the case, then you can't be nickel and diming people for stuff.
Exactly.
And it's not a good look.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And people start to read into that. And I think that the people that I have repelled are in that vein. And so if they have things to say about me, I'm actually okay with it. I don't feel like I got to defend myself. I don't got to do anything because we just have different value sets. Yes. And so obviously I'm not in your value set, and that's okay. Yeah. And like I can sleep well at night with that. And I think that also is hard for people, right? Because the people pleasing comes in, right? With relationships, it's like, but I want everyone to like me. And that's still true too. I'm that way as well. And at the same time, the reason, like if someone says, I don't like Jordan, and I hear the reason why, majority of the time when I hear the reason why, I'm like, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, because this is interesting, and I think maybe this is like kind of maybe our last hurrah, but like this, and when building a community, it is so, me and Maria say this all the time, we're like, we do something and we're like, oh, the enemies, the enemies are coming. Like even when we choose high vibe women speakers, like I'm always like, we get like hundreds of applications for 10 spots, right? Yeah. And then I'm like, oh my God, but that person, I love them, I love their kids. I'm like, I can't not put them on stage. And then it's like, but are they the right person for this one? Like probably not. Okay, like, okay, I'll send them that voice note. And but it's like, sometimes I find that like we're so fearful of being disliked that we make choices from that place, and then we're the ones who are resentful. Yes. So I'm curious, like, how have you navigated that in building your like you have a great audience, a great community of people who love you, and I'm sure that also comes with people who have had opposite experiences.
Absolutely.
And so, how do you navigate that?
Again, when it comes to even having an online business, I think it's just as much as you build online, you need to build offline. Mm-hmm. Because if I didn't have amazing family and friendships who literally don't know what I do and don't care, like truly, I know, like then I would worry about that. Yeah. Because if my whole identity is revolved around these technically strangers, like being my true fans or cheerleaders, then of course when I get negative feedback or someone doesn't like me, then it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt. I'm saying that it doesn't hurt for long, usually, because again, I usually am someone who will reach out and ask for the feedback. And again, I get feedback that's just like, oh, okay, like that's okay. Like I'm okay with that. Like there was some stuff with my first event where some folks had a different interpretation of what VIP meant. And it was not aligned with the same way that I do VIP. Yeah. And that wasn't discussed, or it wasn't messaged well. And I can totally take that, where I'm not the kind of person who puts people on pedestals. That's not the VIP necessarily. Yeah. VIP is more intimate VIP. Like you want to be in a smaller room and have those deeper conversations, and you want the depth. That's more of what my VIP is. Less you have your own table and no one can sit with you, and more I want depth in this experience. I want to meet everybody, but I also want depth. So I did a much better job of managing that expectation in the second go round, and the VIP dinner probably was my favorite part of my event. Yeah. So it's cool when that turns around, but there were people that were unhappy for the first event, and I understood. I took the feedback, and again, as much as I could, because I felt very fragile because of all the grief happening. But I was like, it's okay. It's okay that you wanted a different experience, and I was not able to give that to you because of, one, that wasn't what I was anticipating, but secondly, that's just not aligned with my values. And so it's okay that you are saying publicly that you did not have a good experience. Yeah. That is 100% okay. And so for me, and again, all that stuff comes out in the wash. There are people who I don't necessarily like for whatever reason, and I have best friends who love them.
Yes, yeah.
It's like, okay. Again, I'm not going to go to my friend and tell them not to be friends with that person or to not do something with that person. It's like we all have our preferences. And so, especially as women, we have to stop taking things so personally. Yes. And realizing that people are coming from different perspectives, different walks of life, different expectations. And so you can ask the questions, you can dive deeper, because I am somebody who I would say I generally take feedback well. And at the same time, I can take that feedback and decide if it fits or not. Yeah. And that's where the difference lies, right? It's not feedback that I'm going to automatically change who I am or change how I go about things for. It's like, that's okay.
And it's also okay to not agree with it. Totally. And I think that's the thing that's so hard, is like when you get negative feedback, you feel the need to defend it. Mm-hmm. And you feel the need to like really, and like I'm really in this season where I'm just trying to I'm seeking to understand. I'm like approaching this with curiosity with people. I had a weird experience with someone recently, and I met someone, they were like, oh, I'm like really close with this person. And my face like completely changed. and they were like, oh, you don't like her. And I was like, no, it's not that I don't like her. It's just, and it was like, it actually I don't dislike her at all. It was just I had a weird experience. Right. And then she shared something very publicly that made me realize that she has so much under the surface that is the reason she behaves the way she does. Yeah. And I was like, oh,
there's an understanding.
And that doesn't mean I have to accept it, totally. But it is just what it is, Yeah, and so 100%. I think people are the way that they are, and I think we do such human work. Yeah. And especially when you're put on such a like pedestal in a sense, totally. With like your following and all of that, like I imagine that it can be stressful, and I love that you live in the choice of whether or not you let it get to you.
Yeah, totally. I give myself like a 10-minute cry.
Yeah.
And then I move on.
Yeah, I love that.
Like I literally will put a timer on my phone. I will, because you are taking in energy, so it has to come out somehow. And usually it's just like in a cry for 10 minutes. And then, my husband has me laughing, and, we've moved on. Because again, the people who are most important in my life love me and know who I am and know my intentions. So
you're not worried about it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I love it. Jordan, this was so valuable. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'm so glad we connected for like a hot minute on Threads, and then brought to the DMs on Instagram, and I was like, I'm in Dallas next week. Shall we pod? So I'm so happy. It was so nice to get to know you a little bit more, and I'd love for you to tell the audience like where they can find you, what you've got going on, how they can get into your world.
Totally. So I do love Threads, and it's really fun over there. It's really interesting.
People are so nice.
I know. I've had a really pleasant experience. But Instagram's my OG. I love my gram, and I do ridiculous reels over there. So if you just want to laugh at my ridiculousness, you're more than welcome. Or come into the DMs because I will chat with you. So that's just at System Save Me. And then I also, because I'm a systems person, love to geek out. And so if you want to dip your toes into some automation, I do have an awesome guide that's called How I Automate 80% of My Business.
Yes.
And so I share all the tools. I share how I use the tools. Like it's like 30, 40 pages of just pure goodness. And that's super fun. So we'll have the link in the show notes.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to go download that. I love that. That's awesome. Well, Jordan, thank you so much. I'm so excited for this episode to go live. And folks, if you're listening, go give Jordan a follow. Go give her a DM because she said she's all up in her DMs.
I am.
And go listen to her podcast as well.
Yes.
I've been listening to
podcast System Save Me.
Yes, I've been listening to your podcast lately and to prep for this, and I was like, oh, so good. But thank you again, and I'm just so excited for us to be connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yay.
Thanks so much for listening to Community with me, Christina Bartold, and I'm just so excited to continue the conversations. If you're looking to grow your community and learn more about social, join us at thesocialbusinessclub.ca and use the code podcast to get your first month for $1. Share this episode with your friends and on social, or leave a review. It means the world.